I am happy to introduce my former student, Janell Myers, who is really far away. I just Google mapped her. She is in Anchorage, Alaska, which is approximately 4,024 miles away. So only 3 days and 38 minutes via the fastest route if I leave right now. But Janelle was a student who graduated from EMU with honors in 2017. And so I'm going to ask her a few questions and we can learn about, what Janelle was doing here at EMU and what she's been up to since. Janelle, if you could briefly introduce yourself and describe your background at EMU, for example, your major, why you chose it, when you graduated, etc.
Absolutely. So again, like you said, my name is Janell Myers. I graduated from Eastern Michigan University with highest honors and departmental honors in biology. That was back in 2017. I was a little bit of a non-traditional student where I went back to finish my undergraduate degree at the age of 25. I had finished my associate's degree in health sciences and then decided to return back to finish my undergraduate degree in hopes of pursuing a major in biology, minor in chemistry to go to physician assistant school eventually. So I completed research in the Leitman lab, focusing on cell wall structure and the proteins that help synthesize the cell wall. And my research was on the coffee plant in particular.
Yeah, you had a really nice honors thesis. A lot of work you put into that. So next question is, what is your current position? Can you tell us also, just tell us a bit about your job?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a physician assistant. I did graduate from PA school in Idaho. I'm a physician assistant that specializes in neurosurgery in the state of Alaska. So I work with the only endovascular neurosurgeon in the state of Alaska, which means she specializes in aneurysms, strokes, and all kinds of vascular problems in the brain and sometimes the neck. So we also focus on general neurosurgery stuff, such as brain tumors, things like hydrocephalus, so water on the brain, and just general degenerative and traumatic spine pathologies. And so I am first assist for all of our open surgeries. I do small procedures independently in the clinic. And then I also see clinic patients and evaluate them for their surgical needs, or I see them post-operatively when they've already had surgery with us. I also care for our inpatients, and I round on those patients each morning.
Wow. Crazy. That's a lot. So if you had to think of like the best aspects of your job, what would those be?
Well, first it's neurosurgery, so it's pretty cool. But I did start this position as a new grad out of PA school, so I was still really excited about learning and like actually getting to do things, and I still had that really excited drive. And so this allows me to keep that fast-paced environment that really has kept that educational drive alive for me. It allows me to continue to learn every single day that I'm in the role, and it really gives me the opportunity to work with my hands to fix a problem. And so I get to see a lot of really complex patients, some very straightforward patients, which is, always great, but some really complex and critically ill patients. And we get to, especially in this patient population with aneurysms and things like brain bleeds, they're actually kind of scary injuries, but it lets me do a lot of hands-on stuff and a lot of critical thinking to kind of work through those problems, which is really exciting for me.
Yeah, I bet. Who knows what you find when you open up the brain, right?
Exactly.
So if you had a typical day, what might it look like?
Yeah, so my days just vary throughout the week. One of the best parts about this position is it allows me to be surprised every day. I never really feel stagnant in my role. And generally a week for me is about 2 days of clinic where I see outpatients in the clinic. Either they need surgery or they've already had surgery and I get to check up on them after their surgery. Or it's 2 to 3 days of surgery where I'm actually in the OR with my surgeon doing procedures. Sometimes I have a clinic where I do small procedures in the office here and just kind of one of these rooms like this. Then I round on each patient that's in the hospital who has either had surgery or is critically ill and will need surgery. I round on them each morning just to make sure that they're doing well and to see if there's any kind of needs that they have and to kind of make a plan for them each day. And then usually I take call one day a week, one weekend a month. And that usually entails, the weekend call is usually from Friday morning at 7 a.m. until Monday morning at 7 a.m. So I'm on call that entire time, just kind of fielding calls from the community. It can be ranging from someone with back pain to someone who has a problem with their incision or they have headaches, things like that. Also the nurses from the inpatient team call. new consults, things like that. So it's always exciting. You never know what's going to happen and what's going to come across your desk.
Yeah, it sounds that way. So I guess one of the questions that might interest students, current students, is how you ended up. How'd you go from where you were an EMU student to where you are?
It's been kind of a long journey, but it's been definitely an interesting one. After I graduated from Eastern, we moved up to Alaska in 2017 for my husband. He was a wildland firefighter. And so we just moved up here for about a year. I was planning on applying to PA schools, but I had a little bit of a couple month gap before I would be actually getting into PA school. So kind of learned about Alaska a little bit. And then I went to PA school in Idaho. And after graduation from PA school in Idaho, I knew I wanted to practice in Alaska, just given my experience when I first moved up here. And people always joke about either you come to Alaska for vacation and either you hate it because it's too cold or you never leave. And I definitely was in the camp of we never left. I went for 1 year in Idaho and then realized we have to go back because this is where I want to live. And, Alaska is one of those places where it's welcoming, but it's wild. We always joke about that. And the rural communities, we're a huge distance from Michigan. Like it's, like you said, Dr. Liebman, it's like 4,200 miles away, but the state of Alaska itself is so vast and so widespread. The entire population of the state of Alaska is about equal to the population of Detroit. And so we are very widely spread out. But even thinking about that, 700,000 people in the state, everybody kind of knows everybody. And you've got friends up in Bethel or friends over here. You've got a family member here. We've operated on people from the same community. It's just that kind of tight-knit community that I really knew I wanted to practice in and build my medical practice in the future. And so getting to learn your patients and getting to learn that patient population up here is just definitely an interesting thing. And I knew I always liked surgery. When I had applied for a few positions to start off with in some of the rural communities, some of the places on like the Alaska-Aleutian Islands, out in the Bering Sea Islands, and it just didn't seem like a great idea for a new graduate student to be going into those positions without some sort of mentorship. And to just kind of get thrown into it seemed a little bit daunting to me. And so the position that I'm in now, it was, you see this job posting for a neurosurgical PA and it's exciting. You're like, oh, they'll never take me as a new grad. But, I applied anyway. And I kind of justified it by, look, I'm a hard worker and I don't have any bad habits. And you can teach me how to better serve this medical practice and you as a surgeon. And I got the job and here I am 2.5 years into the position. And again, still learning every single day about just a whole wide variety of different medical diagnoses when it comes to brain, spine, and everything. So, I really enjoy it.
That's really cool. So sort of thinking in terms of longer term goals, where are you headed, do you think?
I know for the long term, I definitely want to stay here in the state of Alaska. There are a lot of opportunities within the state for medicine. The good thing about being a physician assistant is that you have the option to change subspecialties without getting recertified or without going to school again. And I could change from, neurosurgery to orthosurgery to women's health or family practice. I could go into pediatrics if I wanted to, just primarily with on-the-job training and mentorship, which again is the biggest part of learning as a physician assistant, is having someone to help guide you. You have the basic knowledge of, medicine in general, but really learning the intricacies of that practice is something that you just learn while you're there. And so I do feel myself wanting to stay in surgery long-term. That's just kind of my passion. You see a problem, you fix it with your hands, and you get to actually, see the benefit of what you've done for that patient. And so that's where I feel the most satisfaction, and that's where I hope to stay.
Cool. So thinking back to when you were at EMU, were there certain classes that you took that were most useful to you, and thinking maybe in terms of your current profession or maybe helping you get there?
Yeah, absolutely. So as a student at EMU, I took classes primarily focused in human anatomy, neuroanatomy, and other just human pathology-based classes like biochemistry and whatnot. And these classes really helped me understand the core information that I needed to succeed in physician assistant school. GPA, all that whatnot. You just learn the core information and really get that under your belt. But it really did seem like a lot of my labs, as well as my undergraduate research project in Dr. Liebman's lab, helped me become a better scientist and in turn a better provider. Many of my hands-on courses and the research project helped me build on those critical thinking skills and independent study skills that help me feel more confident today in my medical decision making. And it really helps me work through problems that I'm faced with each patient encounter that I face today.
Yeah, I remember we ran into a few roadblocks along the way. So the critical thinking was really important. So it's good that it's paying off.
Yeah, absolutely.
So other experiences that have prepared you for your career.
Yeah. So my undergraduate research again was one big one that really was helpful in building those critical thinking skills that allowed me to appropriately diagnose and treat patients, day to day. And so before my undergraduate degree at Eastern, I worked as a surgical coordinator for pediatric surgery at the University of Michigan. And that kind of helped me understand the intricacies behind a surgical practice and kind of how surgeons functioned and how their PAs and mid-level practitioners and APPs function. And it's really helped a lot in kind of understanding where I wanted to fit into the medical world. And I did spend a lot of time volunteering in different rural clinics in the state of Alaska when I first moved up here. And I spent a lot of time volunteering with the Alaska Native Tribal Health Consortium, which is a consortium of different tribes within the state of Alaska to provide care for our Native population. And that also helped me understand just kind of where I wanted to practice here in the state of Alaska. So.
Awesome. So if you had a piece of advice that you would give a current EMU undergraduate seeking a career in your field, like PA, for example, what would you give them?
Yeah, so for those students seeking a degree in medicine, whether it's as an MD, DO, PA, nurse practitioner, nurse, however you want to, kind of approach the medical world, I just encourage you to build confidence by doing, working in a lab, volunteering, things like that, and really being engaged in my lab courses to help truly understand where I'd be happy in my career, and that working with my hands to solve a problem was the way to go for me. I encourage you to seek the opportunities where to not only learn from a book, but in real life and in the lab and by volunteering and just seeing patients and seeing things. You're never going to truly know until you actually see it and do it. And then when I started my educational journey at EMU, I only had my associate's degree in a very basic understanding of genetics. And this is the funny story I love to tell people, that I went to Dr. Liebman's lab and I was like, all right, I want to graduate with honors. I need to be in a lab. I was like, Dr. Liebman was gracious enough to take me on as a student, but I remember going into his office the first day and he very passionately explained his research for over an hour. And I remember just sitting there trying not to cry in front of this man because I was so confused and I didn't understand a single thing. I went home to my boyfriend, now husband, and cried. And I was just like, I don't understand a single thing that this man said, but he was so passionate about it and so smart about it. I'm never going to live up to his expectations. I'm never going to understand this. Dr. Liebman took a chance, let me in his lab, and helped teach me over the next 2 years. And over those next 2 years, I learned new things every day, just as with this job. And I was really able to tie my research into courses that I would end up taking, like genetics and biochemistry and organic chemistry, help make me a better student. And really my biggest advice is that even if you're scared or even if you don't understand what you're doing to begin with, you're going to look back in 2 years or a couple of years or so, and you're going to be thankful that you really kept working at it. And because what may seem impossible now, you're going to look back and laugh at how far you've come. Because now I can go back and talk about cell wall, carbohydrates, and people are like, how does that help you? But it really helped me understand, my critical thinking, my problem solving skills. And now, even though my research isn't necessarily directly related to medicine, Nestle was actually able to finally get my protein to work. So that was really exciting for me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I remember when you were leaving, you mentioned just that, when you started, you really didn't know, what you were doing, but by the end, you felt like you really could continue working on it if you weren't heading off in another direction. So that's pretty cool.
There was definitely a battle ongoing as to whether or not I wanted to skip PA school and just go do a master's in biology to keep
Oh,
working on
wow.
the project.
I didn't know there was a
So
battle.
it was definitely a battle. It was
Wow.
a lot of conversations had, but it's definitely something that, again, just having the drive to just figure it out and keep working at it, because again, you learn day by day, and the little steps day by day may not seem like a lot when you're looking, Monday to Tuesday, but Monday of 2017 to 2019, you're like, oh, that's a big difference. So
Right.
everything does change.
Yeah, for sure. So any other advice that you want to share or questions that you'd like me to ask you?
I think that that covered all of it. Again, for students wanting to get in the medical field, just the hands-on stuff is really important. And then when you do get into medicine, if you do get into PA school or nurse practitioner school or MD, whatever you get into, don't just sit back and watch people do things. Always offer to do things, whether that's changing a patient, moving a patient, starting an IV, starting fluids, riding along in an ambulance for an EMS ride to just learn how other specialties and other practitioners work. Get out there and do things. And if that means getting involved in a lab while you're in your undergraduate, just to learn different ways to approach problems, that's going to be the most helpful in your future. And again, thanks again to Dr. Leitman for having me today, and also helping me through my undergraduate years and my research studies. And yeah, EMU has been really helpful throughout the years, and I'm very thankful for the opportunity.
Yeah, well, we're always happy to have great students like you. So, well, thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to share with us and to, share some insight to EMU students who may be thinking about not even knowing what their, which direction they're heading, but now they can at least know, another possibility. So,
Absolutely.